Hello and a very warm welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with me, that's Rosie Gilmoss, and I have a guest from across the pond again. Hello, Sari.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Welcome. And you, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for being, I'm going to say brave enough. Some people might say stupid. We're going to say brave to come and talk to me and share your story. Now, you live in Maryland, near Washington, am I right?
Mm-hmm. Right, in Washington, D.C., yeah.
So I haven't inflicted a 6 a.m. or a 5 a.m. Video call on you like I did my last American guest. In my defense, it was her schedule. So we're going to talk, obviously you are widowed because otherwise you wouldn't be here. And your story has got some really interesting aspects to it. I know not much more than our audience, apart from the application form and the brief chat that we've had. But what I do know is that your husband was called Ben, which is a very good name, obviously. I've never met one I didn't like. And you lived together and had children together, knowing that he was going to die of a terminal cancer. So I think this is going to be really interesting as well as really sad. So I always sound excited to hear, which sounds really kind of ghoulish, but you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
Thank you. So I'm not going to chatter on too much. I'm going to let you take the lead here because this is your story, which you are going to tell in however you choose. And I always say to my guests, it's not my story, it's yours. So there is no right or wrong way to tell this, and you give as much or as little information as you want. But I'm going to give you the mic now. I'm going to ask you just to tell us a little bit about Ben and how you met and what that life of knowing that the person you love is going to die, what that's like, because I don't have any personal experience of that. And informed, I want to hear it all. So whenever you're ready, you take over.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I really cannot explain how much the Widow podcast in general have helped me. And so the fact that you're doing this is just so amazing. And I have to agree, I have never met a Ben I don't like. They're always wonderful. Like,
they're always good guys, right?
So Ben and I met when I was 16 and he was 18. And he was in college. I know we were such babies. He was in college and we had mutual friends. And I met him one time and he was like, oh, this girl's annoying. I don't want to be around her. And I was. So like, okay. And Ben was really, everyone loved him. He had this boisterous laugh and just wonderful personality. So of course, like we didn't see each other for years. And then we met again through we had a lot of mutual friends and we both ended up at one of his friends was in a band. So both were watching this band play. And that was that. We were having just a great time. We ended up staying extremely late and just chatting the night away. And then we would end up going to the same shows together, the same bands to see. And we became inseparable. We started as friends and then continued. And
the best kind of relationships, huh?
We were so young, I was 21 and he was 23. And then, just as young relationships do, we broke up for a year, and I traveled around. He tried to figure out what he wanted to do. And then we ran into each other on New Year's Eve, like perfectly out of a fairy tale. Fireworks were going off. We were making out in the streets. And then that was that. We did.
That was it.
Forward. Yep, we were together.
And how old would you be at this point?
I think I was 25 at that point. But
yeah, a little bit more. I'm thinking 21, like you don't know who you are.
No,
not 25. I mean, from 43, I'm still not sure.
But we lived together for quite some time, and Ben took a while to figure out what he wanted to do, like in his adult world. So he was in school sometimes, back out of school, and just working different jobs. I am a social worker and was getting my master's degree in social work when we first lived together, and just doing really intense social work jobs. But
I was going to say, that's not an easy job, is it? No. Social worker.
No, and he was my biggest supporter. Ben was one of the most intelligent, fun, loud, boisterous people I've ever met. And yesterday was his birthday, so today I'm a little bit more emotional than usual because he would have been 40. But he was just wonderful, and people were reaching out to me and just reminding me, like, he had these fantastic hugs and these dimples he would flash and this twinkle in his eye, just very mischievous and silly. He was just absolutely
wonderful.
the best.
He sounds wonderful. He really does. So why is it always the good ones, eh?
I know, right?
So
we ended up getting married when I was 29. We waited a while, and then I was 29, he was 31, and then the next year, Ben started getting a cough, and he was such a dude, like such a man, and he's a very anxious person, and he didn't want to go to the doctor. And I remember thinking back at that time, I don't want to make your doctor's appointments for you for the rest of my life. Like, this is not going to be my job. We're a team. We're in this together. We are equal partners. Make your doctor's appointment. And he wouldn't do it. And we actually were working at the same company at this point. I was the one of the social workers in a residential group home, and he was the IT person at the group home. And one day somebody walked past the IT room, and I happened to be there, and they said, "Someone's coughing a lot in there. Do you think they need help?" And I was like, "Okay, I'm making the appointment." Like,
I'll just do it. Yeah.
And so, unfortunately,
Sorry, I knocked my table. Sorry, I just knocked my table and caused a massive. It's because I can't sit still. I'm crossing my legs. I'm crossing my legs. Sorry, I digress. But I tell you what's just stood out to me then is when you said he was like such a man about going to the doctors, and you think it's bravado or like not wanting to show weakness, but then you mentioned anxiety, and actually I reckon for a lot of people, men, it's anxiety, it's fear that comes across in that kind of male, bravado. I don't need to see a doctor. I can fight this off.
And Ben was not. He didn't have that bravado about him. He was like the ultimate feminist. He truly was, and like
mine wasn't.
Loved women and thought they were just amazing. Like, couldn't wait to have a daughter. That's all he wanted in life. And he was just very anxious and didn't want to cause he wasn't the healthiest anyway. So he was just like, I don't want to ruffle any feathers kind of thing.
And was there a sort of sorry, I'm really I said I wasn't going to wait till the end and ask you questions, but they pop into my head. I'm just wondering if the anxiety came from anywhere. Was it like, was there a history of medical issues in his family, or do you think it was just that they're going to draw attention to my lifestyle
I think he's just an anxious person no matter what. And then going to the doctor, you never know what can come up. And like I said, Ben wasn't the healthiest. Never would I have expected the outcome to be cancer, but he was overweight, and we love to eat, we love to drink, we love to, not take care of ourselves, just being young and silly and enjoying life.
I can relate.
Yeah. So when we went initially, it took a while for them to figure out what was going on. They initially thought he had walking pneumonia. Then that turned into he took medication that did not work. Then they thought he had regular pneumonia. Again, medication didn't work. They ended up sending us to a pulmonologist. And I say us because we were doing this together like the entire time. I went to every appointment with him, and we really were just a team. And at the pulmonologist, they again never indicated cancer at all. They were like, maybe you have some weird underlying infection. So they went and did bronchoscopy, I believe it's called. So they were doing a biopsy of his lungs. And even with that, they had him back in quarantine after, like before COVID was a thing. They had him in quarantine thinking that he had some weird lung infection and they didn't want to affect anybody. And then it turned out he had lung cancer. And unfortunately, we found out I don't know if you guys have this where they have like a portal where you can access your record when things pop up.
It's coming. It doesn't really work, actually. No, there's the greatest health system in the world over here does have its problems. Yes, we've just all been told we use an NHS app, but it doesn't work. But yeah, I can. Yeah, I get.
So unfortunately, it's a great thing to be able to have this.
But you don't want to get that news.
We got that answer before any doctor called us. So we're, of course, using like Dr. Google. And Ben understood. I could not comprehend logically what was happening. So I still went to work that day. I I kept reading the results over and over again, and I just like it wouldn't go through my mind. I couldn't accept it. And then we did get the call from the doctor, and that it was cancer, and they sent us to an oncologist like within a week, I believe.
So the C word, like it's just not a word that you want in your vocabulary, is it? It's not something you want to hear. But I'm also thinking he's young. His lifestyle's not brilliant, but whose is at that age? And I know from doing this job that a lot of cases are missed because the patient, for want of a better term, is in good health and they're young, and it doesn't have the sort of symptomatic signs that you might expect. So at this point, you've been told that Ben has cancer. I mean, that's shit. But do you know how bad it is, or are you thinking, okay, we're going to do chemo, we're going to I'm hearing there's a bit of denial from you anyway, which I think I would be exactly the same.
I just had no idea. Like I had been so fortunate that I had never really been exposed to cancer like my grandparents did, but that's more expected. And I just had no idea what to expect. Zero clue. So when they told us he had cancer, thankfully we had an appointment with the oncologist very quickly. And it was at Johns.
But that in itself is worrying, no?
What?
Yeah. That in itself is worrying when they booked you in really quick.
Because they were like, he is so young and we've been doing this, and it was presented in a much more positive way because they're in a way, not, I don't want to say excited, but like, oh, it's a young lung cancer patient. Like, this is, maybe we can
do our magic. Things. We can work. Yeah.
So, and Ben was just the best. He just had such a enigmatic personality. Everyone just flocked to him. So we had a wonderful team for the entire cancer journey, but they just loved him and me and by proxy. So we had a really wonderful care team. But the first time we went, I remember the doctor asking, 1, how is your anxiety? And 2, do you want to have kids? And Ben and I immediately, we were already talking about having kids, and without even saying a word, we were like, yes. So they sent Ben to an IVF thing. And thankfully my sister-in-law works for an IVF. It's called Shady Grove Fertility. And with her help and the doctors, they were able to get him in so we could save his sperm. And then he was able to start a new targeted therapy treatment. So initially, like within the first week, we were not sure how bad it was. But he got PET scans, and he ended up having stage 4 lung cancer because it started in one lung and it had crossed through the lymph nodes in the chest and started happened in the other lung as well. It hadn't spread anywhere else, but because it metastasized to another location, technically, it was still called stage 4.
And for the uninitiated, how many stages would you expect there to be with a lung cancer? Is 4 as bad as it gets, or is there a 5?
Yeah. And again, I was completely naive and ignorant. I knew nothing. I remember laying in bed one night with Ben, and I was Googling because he was sleeping and I was so anxious, and I was just looking it up, and it said stage 4 lung cancer has a 5% survival rate at 5 years. And I screamed and woke him up and was like, you're going to die? Like, this is where we're at? And he was like, no, honey, put that away. Don't look at that right now. We don't know all the information. We're going to get more information. It's okay. He was always we were very reassuring for one another, and like our biggest emotional support pre-cancer and during cancer as well.
Yeah. I think I'd like you in my corner. I think you'd be a good person to have in your corner. Okay. So you've had this really, really shocking diagnosis, and I don't know what the medical care is like over there. So are we talking surgery, chemo? What was their plan of action for him? Were they clinging onto this 5%?
So they never really talked about terminal diagnosis. That wasn't a word that was ever mentioned. I tried ended up battling for 4.5 years. For 4.5 years, I tried to be like, how long is he going to live? And it took until really the end for me to be like, okay, I really need some answers now. But they wanted to remain hopeful, and Ben did too. They just didn't think it would be helpful for him to hear that. But so with lung cancer, there's so many different nuanced things. I used to know all of the words. I really don't remember them anymore. But
I won't quiz you.
what they had like different characteristics and different cell diagnoses. And unfortunately, with Ben, he had, of course, some rare mutation where he couldn't accept the first line of treatment, but they had just had an FDA approval for a new targeted therapy, and he was able to take it was just a pill. So it was really like a chemotherapy, but just pill form. And he responded so amazing to that. Like one of the lungs cleared up completely. The it
Wow.
the maybe not completely. It was not in his lymph nodes at all anymore. The other side, I mean, it was still full of cancer, but it was it looked like a blizzard, then it was just a snowstorm, was I remember how they described it, and they showed us pictures, you could see, it was just remarkable. And for that first year, he was great, like, you wouldn't have any idea he had cancer, he was still working, we were still eating and drinking and just living our lives.
Living your lives.
And I mean, he was getting a little bit more tired, but nothing that really impacted how we lived. And during that time, we started IVF right away, and that was really
And that
hard.
must have been a really, really difficult decision because, I mean, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no, because you described how you both instantly said, yes, we want children.
Mhm.
So, and then he's got the indignity of going to the sperm bank. When you said your sister had helped, I was like, oh my God, where's this going?
She's got an appointment.
But it's to have children anyway is a really scary like launch of into the abyss, right? None of us know what's coming, and for you to do this knowing that you are going to be caring for somebody who's going to get progressively sicker,
Mhm.
and then you have the kind of actually, I'm going to ask you, what did you think the chances were that you would be raising children alone? Did you know, or did you still cling on to the hope?
I In looking back, like, I knew logically that eventually Ben would die, eventually. I did not think it was gonna be as soon as it was, and I did not think he was going to get as sick as he did. But again, this was just pure ignorance, and
How do you
the way
know?
they were presenting
How?
it also was because there was all of this new research and funding in lung cancer, they really were treating it like a chronic illness because they were starting to see people living for 10 plus years with lung cancer. And because of how he had responded so quickly and so well to the first line of treatment, that's what I believe the doctors and we were hoping for. So I was like, okay, we can do this. He'll be here for 10 more years. Like,
Yeah.
so that's
And
just
also,
far
you
as
don't
it
know
went.
what's going to happen. You know, in that next decade, the cure could come out, right? This
Mhm.
is, I can feel this sort of, okay, we're going to do, and also the like, fuck you to cancer almost. Like, we're just going to live our lives. We're
Yeah.
going to keep going.
Mhm.
Like, you're not going to take this from us. And I think that was a really, really brave choice. But I bet you're bloody glad you've got your kids
Oh
now,
my
hey?
goodness, I'm so glad. And, I said that Ben was very anxious before, and I have to say, I he just and I had known him for so long and still at that point, and he just turned into the bravest soul I just didn't even know that that was possible for him, and he took it all in such stride and really led the charge of, like, "We're still going to live life, like, we are in this together, we're going to have our life," and I agreed, so I don't know if this was the smartest, but it's what we did, and I have no regrets about it, but we're like, "Okay, we're gonna buy a house, we're gonna start our family, and we're going to just keep living." So we we started IVF in February and bought our house in April, and our first 2 IVFs didn't work, but our 3rd one did, so we got pregnant in August of 2017, and Ben was still doing really well, and it was wonderful. Like, it was just so great, and our family was so supportive. His parents were along the ride the whole time, and mine, oh, I don't even know what I would do without mine. They were just the biggest supporters. So, at first it was great, and then, he's when our daughter Lily, she was born, and Ben was completely there with me. He was healthy.
When was she born? Because she must be the same age as Tabby. When was she born?
She was born in May 2018.
Oh, so she's a little bit younger, but Tabby was September 17. So we got similar age girls. Solidarity.
Yes. Ooh, they're tough. But
that's like, give me a house of boys.
So then this is where I start to, everything starts to blend together. So when Lily was like 9 months, I believe, the cancer started progressing and he wasn't responding to the treatment anymore. It was still just in his lungs, but it was just obvious, like, okay, this is back in both lungs. We're getting to like this blizzard status again. So at that point, they really they wanted to keep him off of chemo as long as possible, because once you go to the chemo route, then, things shift quickly because your body responds differently. So they really encouraged him to join a clinical trial, and Ben was all about it. So we ended up joining a clinical trial. I think he was like number 92 or 93. Like, it was very early stages, and it was a little further away. It was like 2 hours from where we lived. But it was closer to his parents' house. So like we would go every 3 weeks and stay with his parents for the weekend and do this clinical trial. It was only for a day, and then we would come back, and we were able to like figure out how he was doing in that time. We got into a schedule. We knew he wouldn't feel well. We knew we would have support, and then he would feel okay after a couple of days. And that lasted for about 9 months. The clinical trial was one of the most traumatizing experiences of my life because
oh my goodness, why?
He had a bad reaction the first 2 times. Within a couple of minutes, he sat up and said, "I can't breathe." And he started vomiting. They stopped the thing, obviously. He caught his breath, and they were like, "Okay, you ready to keep going forward?" Like, they gave him a bunch of allergy medication and stuff, and he's like, "Okay, let's keep going." And then they continued, and a few minutes later, his whole muscles started twitching. Like, I was looking at him, I could like see the muscles in his face contorting, and he's like, "Oh, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong." I was like, "You are absolutely not fine." Like, we're getting some help here. So then they had to end it for the day. But then we had to come back the next day, and he was doing fine for a little bit, and then his body started breaking out, like, with these, it was red and purple all over his face. He started swelling, but they were like, "If you don't finish it today, then we have to take you off the trial." And he's like, "I'm finishing it. I don't care." So they just did it very slowly for like 15 hours. It was, and
so
he again was so brave. I was freaking out. He was so brave and stuck it through. And after that, thankfully, he never had a bad reaction again. It was just the first 2 times.
But even just watching this person that you love trying to save themselves so that they can live, and so watching them be subjected to this. I mean, it's even chemo, it's poison, right? It's the damage that's done, and that he would willingly walk himself into that room and subject himself to something so horrible to try and be around for you and your daughter, because that's what he would have been doing it for, right? To stick around for you guys.
I mean, Lily was the absolute love of his life. He just adored that little girl. And like I said, he always wanted a little girl. She's all he ever wanted. And I mean, Ben adored me too. Like, he was just madly in love with me, and vice versa. I was madly in love with him. And it was just, he really wanted just to make it as long as he could with us. That was his whole goal. And also when we walked in for the clinical trial, that was also the first time I was like, "Oh, now we're like really in cancer world." Like, before we were blocked a little bit, like we would go to the oncology and meet with the oncologists and the nurses and have our follow-ups, doing scans. And yes, it was stressful, but this was like glaring in our face. We're like in a private room for the clinical trial people in a semicircle. There's people who are obviously dying, like, and I just hadn't been exposed to it before. So after the first couple times, I was like, okay, I knew what to expect and I understood. But at first, it was just such a shock. It was such a shock.
Yeah, it brings the reality of it, because you can convince yourself, your brain can do a lot of very clever thinking, can't it? And I guess it's a little like when patients go into a hospice, perhaps, and you see that it's like, I don't know, the reality that the journey is going to end, and it's going to end a lot sooner than you wanted it to.
So then we always knew we wanted a second kid, but at this point, we didn't know how things were looking. So when the clinical trial, he ended up like his lung ended up collapsing. Things just weren't going well. And he was getting very weird symptoms, like just he's breaking out all over his face, all over his scalp was just covered in scabs. And he was fine with all of that. But then towards like the end of the trial, he was throwing up a lot. And I was like, something's not right. Like, and he never wanted me to report about it, even though I had the doctor's number on speed dial. They were very engaged and wanted to hear all of the symptoms and things that Ben was experiencing, but he was so worried he was going to get kicked off. But eventually I was like, he's getting sick every single morning. Like he's still going to work. Something's not right. And they were like, this is progressing. I think your time here is done. So then we went back to the oncologist. They did scans, and they had not been scanning his brain at that point, but they did a full body scan. And when that came back, he just had metastasized all over his brain. It was covered. They couldn't even count how many lesions there were everywhere.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That's just horrible. It's just horrible that this happens. I don't ever get desensitized to it. And there's something about it being in the brain as well, because that's really going to strip me.
Please just don't let it go to my brain. Just don't let it go to my brain. And then it was.
It's like you can take the physical deterioration, but as long as you're there. And I know from talking to John about how Sarah was at the end of her cancer. I don't want to say journey. That's gross.
I know. I hate that word. But then,
at the end of her life, there's no way.
I know. There's no way to get around the journey word, but I really hate it too.
Oh, it's horrible, isn't it? And the fact that you're suffering this awful loss of your person, but they go sooner because of the medication, because of the cancer and the horrors it inflicts on them. And so you think, as a sudden death widow, you think, oh, but you get to say goodbye, but you don't always get that, because if once it starts to affect their mind, you've lost them. They've gone. And I as soon as you said brain, then I was like, oh no.
And Ben was, one of the things he prided himself most in was his brain. He was so smart and so witty, like one of the funniest people ever. And he loved that about himself. Like it gave him a huge sense of confidence. And he was just like, if I can't make jokes about this cancer experience, like what are we doing here? So thankfully, like his cognitive abilities didn't shift.
Oh, good.
But he was just so sick. He was just throwing up constantly. But they decided to do like the targeted therapy re-challenge and do chemo at the same time. And with that, his brain mets completely went away. Like went in complete remission. No evidence of
wow.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I mean, it goes to show you that this stuff works.
I know.
Just not all the time, right?
And his lungs also like were doing so well. Like, so then at that point, it was 2020, and Ben then finally was like, okay, I'm going to stop working I was like, come on, dude, like, let's enjoy life a little bit. So then made a joke.
And then March came.
I know. Yep. He was like, well, I stopped working. And then a week later, everyone else stopped working too.
Let's see the world, right? I shouldn't. I feel like I'm safe to make some like dark humor jokes here, because I feel like it's what Ben would have wanted.
Oh, 100%. And me too.
Yeah. I try and gauge my guests. I don't always get it right.
So again, like we could kind of, he's not having really bad side effects, and we could kind of gauge when we knew he was going to be sick, when he wasn't. We would knew to have extra help for like the few days after his chemo treatments. But again, with COVID, everything shut down. So Lily, the doctors strongly recommended that Lily not go to daycare because Ben was so immunocompromised at that point. So I was working from home because I had to, because I was the only insurance holder and provider. As a social worker, it's not.
Oh gosh, I bet that was a tough job in COVID as well. God.
So I honestly don't even know how. Thankfully, I think because Ben and I had worked together for so long, the company knew Ben, they knew me. They were very lenient with me. And I was the clinical supervisor, so I was overseeing all the therapists at that time. and I wasn't doing direct therapy anymore. So I guess
Yeah.
I was able to work from home. So Ben could watch Lily like half the day, then he would get too tired and my mom would come or my mother-in-law, or I would take off the rest of the day. Somehow we made it work. Ben was doing well. And I was like, please, can we have another baby?
I love that you just, I know what'll help here.
And again, I don't know what I was thinking. I again just didn't see. I think just naively, I didn't think he was gonna die. Like that just wasn't happening.
And perhaps you wanted him to meet the baby, because if you would plan to have a baby and then you don't want to have the baby and him not meet the baby, right?
Right. He
So
wasn't an option. And I really
time is of the essence.
we really wanted to have another child. And I just knew that Lily would be the best big sister and it would be helpful for her too. And then Ben was doing well. So he was a bit more reluctant because he was a bit more realistic and was just like, are you sure that this is the right thing? Like, are you going to be able to handle all of this? I was like, what do you mean? You're going to be here. It's fine. So we got pregnant on the first try this time with a little boy. And then in October of 2020, which again was a different situation because of COVID. So I went and got pregnant all alone. Ben couldn't come in the room with me. And so that was very interesting. And then within a month and a half later, Ben got very sick. And
is this a month or so after the baby was born or after the
I got pregnant.
pregnancy?
I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. So I got pregnant in October 2020. And Ben then got very sick in December 2020. He started throwing up again, and I could just tell that the brain mets had come back. If I had known that was going to happen, I don't know that our choice to have a baby right then would have been the same, because
Sari, I don't know whether I'd have had a third child if I'd known Ben was going to die 6 months later. You don't do this
right.
with it. Somebody said to me once, sorry, one of my tangents, but they said to me, it was when Ben and we just got married and we were talking to some friends of ours. They had 4 children, and we're like, yeah, but just started my work. We were in a 1-bedroom flat, and they were like, listen, if you wait till the right time, you will never have a baby. And we sort of went, I get, you're right. Like people have babies in the drawers, and so I think that hindsight's a wonderful thing, but also perhaps some of those decisions that you made. I'm trying to, I've lost my words, but I look at my daughter, Tabby, who's now she's 6.5. And I think, no, I wouldn't, if I had known what was going to happen, I wouldn't have had her. But I'm so glad that I did.
Oh my goodness.
I'm so glad.
Nicholas is his name, my son, Nicholas. And he's just my hero. Like, I don't know how I got through that time with Ben being so sick and with everything. I think being pregnant with Nicholas helped me so much, even though it was physically harder. I just knew I had to still be here. I couldn't drink. I couldn't do any of the negative coping skills that we do.
No, and you have to be kind of as present as you're able to be, because I was much the same with Tabs. Like I had this baby that was completely reliant on me, needed to be fed, needed her nappy change, still woke me up about 7 times a night until about a year ago. But you do all this reading, don't you? How can I help my children? And one of the things was, about how babies are really they really feel your feelings. And I was like, right, okay, so I'm not going to let her just be sad. And so I dragged myself to the baby yoga and all that sort of stuff, things that I would have just sat at home drinking and crying if I hadn't had this small baby that needed me. So, because the boys were at school, I wasn't just neglecting them.
I understand completely. And Nicholas, absolutely, I say he's my hero, but Lily too, and so Lily's always been she is wise beyond her years. And looking back at her, the amount that she could comprehend and understood and articulate. I was having just normal conversations with this 3-year-old girl, but we finally told Lily about Ben's cancer when he started chemo. So she was about 2, and because he was going to lose all of his hair, and he had a big beard, like a big, big beard. And we knew he would look different. So he started prepping her. And like we said, that he had cancer. And that meant that was a big sick. It's not something that you can just catch, because Lily would get frequent fevers all the time. And so we didn't want her to get scared, like, oh, I get sick, so I have cancer. So somehow we worded it to her, and she truly understood. And Ben included her as much as possible. She helped shave his head. She would pick out Band-Aid colors. He would say, "What color do you want me to come home with today when I go to my appointment?" And he would come home with the Band-Aid colors that she asked for. And like when he would get really sick, she would bring him toast and she would bring him Sprite. Like I have videos where she's singing to him and she's like, "Good night, Daddy," and they're tiptoeing out of the room. So
Oh, little love.
I know she just has such a wonderful heart and it really understood. So,
but I'm just going to jump in again here. Sorry.
please.
And I'm actually just going to kind of mention this and the fact that you involved your daughter at such a young age and were so open and clear with her, because from speaking to people who lost parents when they were little, who are sort of our age, what often happened was it was whispers and silence, and the children didn't know what was happening. And then after the parent died, there was no conversation about them. It was all very behind closed doors. And actually, nobody does this hoping to cause damage. They do it to protect the children. But actually, having that dialogue and teaching them that it's okay to talk about it, and it feels really difficult, right? It feels really difficult. You don't want to shatter a kid's, we've seen Disney films. We know that that's the adversity they have to go through in for the worst possible scenarios. So we don't want to do that to our kids. But actually, by being honest and open, you get this empathy, this understanding, and you'll probably find that as she gets older, she's really grateful that you involved her. So that's just my little input onto that. So as you were.
Well, thank you. I don't even remember where I was. I don't know.
We were talking about Lily and the kind of understanding that she had and how caring she was with her dad. I know this because I make notes.
Well, thank you. So then, yeah. So like Ben, when he started chemo and lost his hair, he started getting really sick really quickly. And he just had like a slew of things happen. And Ben's goal was always to stay out of the hospital. And to give myself some credit here, I was a fantastic nurse. I knew that man like the back of I knew him better than myself. I could look at him and knew what he needed to feel better, how just to help him feel as comfortable as possible and that he could participate in life as comfortable as possible. That was he just wanted he wanted to spend his time with his daughter and with me. So he wanted to stay out at the hospital, and with COVID, we didn't want him to go to the hospital. He ended up getting an abscess in his rear, a perianal abscess.
Poor guy, how undignified.
I know, it was terrible. And he had one actually when he got cancer, and it was not great, but like because he wasn't so sick, it was able, it just wasn't the same as it was this next time. And I became a wound care specialist both times and helped him out. But this time it was really bad. He ended up in the hospital and the hospitals were shut down. So nobody could come in with him. And his brain mets were there. He was so sick. I was the one taking care of him. But at this point, he had to be all by himself. So he ended up having to get emergency surgery. He was in the hospital for 3 days and he was so sick. And the doctors, nurses, I was getting so much mixed information. And I was so pregnant and taking care of my daughter. And just one day I was like, I'm going, I don't care. And I went there and I was like, I'm going into this hospital. Like, you cannot stop me. This is not okay. He's not able to take care of himself. And somehow I got in, they let me go take care of him. When I walked in there, I'll never forget he was like purple. He was just freezing cold. He was so sick, could hardly speak. And within 2 hours of me being there, he was up, talking, moving around, and we got discharged a few hours later, which was just unreal.
Yeah, and a lot of that as well will be the hopelessness of being stuck in a room on your own, and COVID, that isolation, that loneliness, and that must have been really horrible for him. And I love you. I love that you just marched into the hospital and were like, no, I'm coming. Fuck it.
I know that I was just like, I'm getting whoever needs to sign whatever fucking papers here. Like, it's happening. And Ben said,
I can just picture you with like 9 months pregnant and bowling in.
And Ben said, he was like, I just remember watching for your feet and I heard you walking, and he was like, and I knew I'd be okay then. We would be fine. And we were. So that was awesome, because then I got to do some wound care on his butt every time he had to go to the bathroom. That was real fun. But even then he made a playlist and would make like with like butt songs on it. Like it was just he just made it as fun as we possibly could in such a no pun intended shitty situation. That's the best time possible.
This is bad. I don't think we're supposed to laugh so much during these, but this is brilliant. I love him.
He's just the best. So from there though, like that's when things started going downhill. I think just anything that at that point started entering his body, he just started physically rejecting it. Then the COVID vaccine came. The doctors very much pushed it um, for him to get it, and he got so sick from that as well. Um, and he just continued on with chemo, but then like his brain mets still were, that he got a scan and the brain mets started coming back again, and he got brain radiation because he just had a few at first, and so he just got local brain radiation. I think it was 5 days. He was very sick, but he was okay. Like he could function. Then we found out that it spread even more, and they were all over his brain, but his lungs were doing so well, like it hadn't spread anywhere else. It was just very snobby and in his brain and his lungs, but he could breathe fine. Like when he started getting really sick, he was on oxygen, like a portable oxygen thing. But at that point, the lungs were doing so well, he didn't need oxygen. So he was just throwing up constantly, couldn't keep anything down. He lost like by the end, like 100 pounds within 9 months. And he ended up getting whole brain radiation. And
Ooh, I don't know what that is, but it sounds horrible.
I don't really know either. I know that he had to go and they were just really like shooting lasers in his brain to break up all of the cells and the metastasis in hopes that it wouldn't keep growing and grow again, because that's really, from everything I know of lung cancer, that's really what ends up happening is it spreads to the brain, and that's what ends up killing the person because they don't have the medication yet.
And also it's your body must be so beaten down from the years of trials, chemo, like it must there is no way that this can't be taking an enormous toll on his health in other areas as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, he still fought, like we'd still go out and but he certainly used a lot of medication, like in every single way possible, um, to keep things down using Ensure. And it was
What about cannabis? Was he able to use cannabis?
Yes, he used a lot of cannabis. And in Maryland, it had just become legal and they could deliver it. So I was his caregiver and I was 9 months pregnant. They were delivering this cannabis to me. Like, I thought this would be helpful for you today. I'm like, not for me, guys.
It's not for me. We're catching up over here, actually. I'm actually on a cannabis trial for anxiety and ADHD. So I have it delivered to me as well, which is like in a locked cupboard, and it's a tiny little amount that you put under the tongue, but it's really transformative. Like I obviously it can't cure cancer, but I know that my anxiety has come down. I'm lower on my ADHD meds. So the reason I asked is because I know that in America you are a little bit more progressive in that area at least. So and that would have helped him with appetite and things like that.
I truly think that helped him tremendously because he was able to eat, he was able to drink, he was able to keep things down. And then with like all of the other, like the body aches and pains, it just helped him. And the anxiety, he was able to relax a bit more and enjoy. So he could come and sit downstairs with us. We would end up watching so many movies and TV shows with Lily in the bed, like just laying together, the three of us. But it was special and it was fun. And he was able to be there as much as he could.
I can feel that. I can feel that how important that will be, and how I've just recorded something else this morning, and I was talking about my son and how we had a very traumatic birth with him, and how I kind of we were just together the whole time, like we just or I'm in a sling, like he was just with me all the time, and that's kind of what you're doing there. It doesn't have to be Disneyland, does it? It's just some time with you, and she'll really. I mean, I imagine she does remember it, but that's creating those memories, isn't it? Creating that legacy. And I think we forget sometimes it's laying just in the bed watching a film or laying on the sofa and having a cuddle. Those things are so important.
Absolutely. So then I was at the end of my pregnancy. Ben was really sick, and all I wanted was for him to make it I wanted him to make it so badly, and he did. Somehow, he started doing so much better. A week before, I had gotten special permission from the hospital to allow Ben and another person to come into the room with me. And then for Ben to be able to leave, because at that point you could only have one person. And I knew that I had hoped Ben would be able to stay, but realistically knew that he wouldn't be able to. But we also he couldn't drive a car anymore. So we had my parents and Ben's parents on like a rotating schedule to be able to stay with us in case I went to labor in the middle of the night, and we lived like an hour from the hospital. So thankfully he made it. He was able to come with me, and he stayed through the birth, and then he had to leave. He got extremely sick. That took him down for a bit. And my mom was with me the whole time, which was wonderful. Then
but he got to be there when your baby was born. Mm-hmm. That's so important.
Mm-hmm. She wasn't there in the room when it actually happened. I was like, I don't think I can handle that. My mom seeing me like,
oh, your mom? No, yes. I meant your.
But she did. Like within hours later, she was there and stayed with me.
I would want my mom as far away from birth. I love her very much, but no.
And then in those 3 weeks, it was wonderful. Like we had people with us all the time. And when he then did die, it was very unexpected. Like looking back, it was like obviously he was deteriorating, but he was still talking, functioning, walking. He had like a new love for ice cream. So we would go on these ice cream adventures and have ice cream parties at home all the time, cooking steaks, and just even if he took one bite, he would get so excited, and we were still functioning. But then he took a break from chemo, but he started getting worried that he wasn't going to be able to breathe again because it started coming back in his lungs. Like it was already in his lungs, but it started growing in his lungs.
Yeah.
So he was like, let's do chemo. He ended up getting chemo on a Thursday, and then Friday, and his mom went with him. I wasn't there, but I know Ben very well. Something in his blood came back a little different. And Ben was such a smooth talker and could chat with anybody, and they knew him so well and me so well. And he was like, it's okay, like, don't worry. But it wasn't a big marker, just something a little off. So he still got his chemo that day. And he was fine the night before, but then a couple of days later, he said his stomach was really hurting. And and at this point, I'm sorry. See, I'm all scattered. I should
No, don't. It's so hard to grab onto a timeline. It really is. And especially with something like this, because it's gone on for such a long time. So don't ever worry about going back and forth.
The story like this in so long. I used to talk about it all the time, but now I just haven't done this in a while. So let me back up. I wanted Ben to get hospice care for a very long time because they had hospice that would just come into the house. And even though I was doing a fine job taking care of him, like I didn't know what I was doing. Really.
Two babies as well.
And this was when I was just pregnant, and
that'll do.
Yeah. And so like when he was getting treatment and stuff, again, he had to go in by himself. I wasn't allowed to come in because of COVID. So I was sitting in the car and talking to the doctors on the phone while he was getting his treatment because he wouldn't give as well-rounded of a picture. And they knew that. Like I was the point of contact. And like I found out alone in the car that because I was like, you need to tell me now how he's doing. Like, are we at the end? And they were like, we're going to give him about 6 more months. And I was alone in the car when I found this stuff out. But it was helpful because I could help them see a bigger picture of what was happening. And finally, they convinced Ben to get hospice care and explained it to him. Like, you can still get treatment at the same time and have hospice, because they were somehow in Maryland, they were going in this progressive way where you can concurrently receive services. You can still get cancer treatment and get hospice services, kind of like palliative care, but not. So we had a hospice nurse that would come in once a week and refill his meds. If she saw like, okay, let's get you comfortable. Like the doctor's not giving you this, let's give you this. And it was really great. And it ended up being wonderful. So then on the day where his stomach was really hurting, I called hospice and was like, something isn't right. They were giving me some tips and things to help him. He couldn't go to the bathroom, like just different things. Then they were scheduled to come the next day. And when they saw him, they were like, Ben, I really think you need to go to the hospital now. And he agreed. He was like, I do. I'm in so much pain and all in his stomach, which was weird. So he went to the hospital. His father took him. And this is where things got weird. The hospital wouldn't tell him what was happening. I had a picture of a selfie that Ben took. And in the back, you can see his blood pressure. And it was like all over the place. It was like 90 over 60, then 100 something over something, then 60. Like it was just, he obviously was not well. And they kept saying, you cannot leave here, Ben. You cannot leave here. But they wouldn't really say what they said. He was constipated. And he's like, if I'm constipated, I'll go home and take a shit. Like, give me some meds. Like, what's the, and he was just determined to leave. Looking back,
but you can understand that, right? If they're not telling you what's wrong, you're thinking, well, why am I here? I might as well be at home with my wife.
Exactly. And I think that they did not use the right language. I didn't understand what was going on. My father-in-law did not understand. But we knew it was something bad. Finally, the hospice nurse called and said, Sari, Ben cannot come home. He's dying now. And I was like, what?
Right.
What are you talking about? Like, that just didn't even cross my mind. And my mother-in-law and I were together. I was home with Nicholas breastfeeding him. And I was like, what do you mean he's dying? You don't know what you're talking about. And we were just like completely up in arms. And she was like, he cannot come home. His blood pressure is all over the place. Like, he needs to go to hospice tonight. And we all agreed because his blood pressure was clearly all over the place. And they were explaining like he could fall and have a big accident and you wouldn't be able to get him up. So Ben agreed. I told him that they told me he was dying. He said, I am not dying. What are they talking about? And he came home. I took him to hospice. He was still lucid. He was talking. He was in a lot of pain, but he was still coherent. And when we got there, they took him into a room. They took me. And when we signed up for hospice services, they asked, like, do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want us to go through all life measuring things to keep you alive? And Ben was like, yes, of course. But we didn't understand the repercussions at the time. They did not really explain to us what that meant. So of course, like, why would he's been doing all these things? Of course we wanted him to do. He was like, is there a reason I shouldn't? And they were like, no. He was like, okay, then yes, do everything you can. But when it actually came to it, they were explaining to me how if we kept that as the code, then they couldn't provide him with the comfort meds because his blood pressure would tank. They would have to give him Narcan to resuscitate him, then send him to the hospital. And he would end up in ICU. He wouldn't be the same and it would end up being terrible. But imagine I had no idea. I could not comprehend what they were telling me. They had the head of hospice calling me. I still couldn't comprehend it. They were finding breast pumps for me and in refrigerators. Like, and Ben was still talking. Like, it was just so confusing to me. But eventually I understood and I changed the code to not do that. And I don't remember this, but the hospice nurse told me that Ben was lucid and said that he was okay with that. He didn't want to go to the hospital. He just wanted to stay where he was. And then within 24 hours after that, he died.
Oh my God.
So not even 20. We weren't even there for 24 hours. He just, we're assuming like he had sepsis or something because we didn't get an autopsy because he was so sick. He was so sick. There was no need to. But I mean, it was just like, I had no idea. I remember calling his parents in the morning because they were staying with my daughter. And I said, I think you're supposed to come now. Like, I think I had hospice call them the night before. I was like, can you explain what's happening? Because I don't get it. I don't know what's going on. But hospice was great in like walking me through, unfortunately, like what it looks like to die. They were like, do you see this? How his skin is looking? Do you see how his body is responding? And Ben had terrible terminal agitation, which I didn't know was a thing. So he was just like so uncomfortable. And I wanted Lily to see him. I wanted Ben to see Lily and Lily to see Ben. So I didn't have them totally sedate him because I wanted him to be able to talk to her. But he at that point was so in so much pain. And when she got there, the hospice nurse was like, Sari, I need to give him something else. And I said, okay, whatever. And I walked Lily in, and the last words he said were, "Good morning, Lily." And he hugged her. I mean, his eyes were closed, but we put him in the bed and he put his arms around her, said, "Good morning." And then that was the last
I'm so
words he
sorry.
spoke.
And what an enormous weight of responsibility for you to have to make that decision to DNR is what they're called over here. And my only experience of this is when John had COVID, and they called me to say that there was a DNR on him, and I was his next of kin, and I hadn't asked for it, but in COVID that was the procedure. No, I didn't have to make that choice, and as you're aware, he did survive. But hearing those words, you must just feel like the ground has gone. You know, you've been clinging on to hope for 4.5 years, and that's kind of when it dies, doesn't it? The hope goes, and I'm just so sorry that this happened to you both. And it feels like you had the injustice of both watching somebody have a terminal illness and then effectively a sudden death. So it was so, like you got the worst of both worlds.
It was so bizarre. And to me, I still don't know what I believe, but I thought this was just so heartbreakingly beautiful that he ended up dying like around 3:30. And my mom, my stepdad, Ben's family, his sister, his parents, everybody was there. And my mom and stepdad were taking Lily home. And so she said, "Bye, Daddy." And she was noticing, she said, "Why is Daddy so cold? But then he's also sweating. Why is he doing this?" Like, she just noticed all of these things. And she sat in the bed and watched a movie with him. And then she went home. My parents, and with Nicholas also, my 3-week-old baby, they took them home. And actually, I think Nicholas stayed with me because I was afraid to leave him. But 30 minutes after Lily left, I was sitting at the bottom of the bed with my mother-in-law, breastfeeding Nicholas, and I looked at Ben and I was like, he's going to die now, right now. And the nurse came in and said, "I need to talk to you in the hallway." And I was like, "No, I don't want to go in the hallway." And she said, "It's important. I need you to come." She's like, "You have a few more hours. So anything that you want to say." And then my father-in-law ran out and said, "Sari, something happened. Something's going on." And he died right then. But it was
not weird.
So weird, so weird. And I think, especially with a piece with my daughter, like the fact that she had just left.
Yeah.
And
Perhaps wanted to not.
She didn't need to see that. She didn't need to.
No.
But she got to see him.
And his were the last words to her. Like, that's really special for her, isn't it?
I haven't thought.
Yeah, same. Right here. I actually, for John, for Father's Day, I think it was, I got him a bracelet, like a bangle thing. A manly,
yeah.
Not girly. And Holly had written something to have engraved in it. And I'm just thinking, like, that might be a lovely gift for Lily to have, like Good Morning Lily at some point, because that'll be so special for her, because it's different. But Tabby will often say what, and she knows, but she'll often say to me, "What was Daddy's first word?" No, Daddy's first word. Jesus, I've lost it. What were my first words? And I was like, "Daddy," like Dada. It was babble. It wasn't actually the word Dad. But for her, knowing that he heard her say Dad it's really important. And they have so few memories when they're young that you want to cling on to everything. And I'm just thinking of you now. You've got this 3-week-old baby. Like, that's tough enough. And your husband has just died.
And a 3-year-old daughter who's very smart, but also is 3.
It's 3. I mean, yeah. Interesting. Tabs has got a really high level of emotional intelligence as well. And I wonder if it is because of the adult themes that they were. That makes me sound dodgy, but you know what I mean.
I know.
The sort of things that children wouldn't normally live through. And but you've now got to go home and tell her that he's actually dead.
Oh my God.
I've had that conversation. I know that it is the worst conversation that you'll ever have. How I don't want to sort of dig in at the really uncomfortable stuff, but How was she? How was she when you told her? Did she do that kind of psychopath thing where they get upset and then they go play and pretend everything's normal?
It was so Ben, I had asked Ben, we tried to talk about things, but it never ended up going well. Like, they're not well. Like, we would end up trying to talk about, like, what should we tell Lily? What should we say this? What do you want at your funeral? And it would always end up in a joke. Like, we could not have a serious conversation about it. But one day we were watching The Lion King, and I was like, can I tell her this? Like, is this what I can say? And he's like, "Mm, let's keep that on the back burner. Like, maybe let's try to think about something different." And I remember when I just was like so concerned about telling her. And I slept, she was already sleeping, so I didn't wake her up. I waited until the morning, and I think I started saying, Daddy died. His heart stopped working, his lungs stopped working, and now he went to heaven. And she said, so can we go see him? I said, nope, he didn't go to heaven. That's not what I mean. That's not what we're gonna say here. And I was like,
You
Daddy's
panic,
now
don't you?
now part of the stars and the moon and the sky, and Daddy is everywhere. And it's really hard to understand. I don't really understand it either, but his body stopped working and we cannot see him anymore. And his body, he'll always be in our hearts. We'll always remember him and we'll talk about him, but he's not here. We cannot see him anymore. And she said, okay. And I was like, if you have any questions, we can talk about it. And I think that was really it for then. But over the next year, I,
Questions?
oh my goodness, I truly dedicated my every part of my being to helping her process and understand as much as she could in her little mind at that age.
I
Like,
love you for that, by the
millions.
way. Yeah, because these children, I can't. I like you. I like you. I'm very, very close to my parents, and my parents are in their 70s now. So I'm beginning to become aware that they, may not be as, at least as present as they have been all my life. Because again, they're going to be old, and the idea of losing one of them is so terrifying to me.
Oh my goodness, I know.
That you can't understand how this can happen to the child. And, your whole job in life is to protect them, right? And you can't protect them from this. But what you can do is you can help them cope. And everything that you're saying is just what I try and do with mine, answer those really horrible questions that they want to know, like, oh, is it bedtime night? Oh, is it bedtime?
Always. Oh,
yeah.
I think that's the
I think
worst.
it's a delay tactic. But and they'll ask quite, and Tabby, she's got some really conflicting feelings because John's been in her life since she was 2. So she has started calling Ben Ben, and don't know if I'm okay with that, but I've kind of got to let her do what she's got to do. And I think this kind of idea of grief ownership as well, of an expectation of them, how to grieve. It was the anniversary of Ben's death this week, and I don't know, like I said to my eldest, how are you feeling? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, look, I'm not going to force you to grieve. We're not going to have like a vigil or anything like that. We're just going to go see Dad's family. We didn't get there because of the traffic, but that's another story. And it's that idea of letting them, giving them the tools so that they can cope with this horrible thing that's happened, because it doesn't have to define them. And that really has taken me a long time to get my head around, that this terrible catastrophic thing will not define who I am actually, she says, doing a widow podcast, but also who my kids are, because there is so much more to them than the fact that their dad died. But like you, I like this idea that the kind of molecular being exists, and there's a children's book I like, and it says something like looking in the dark sky because love like starlight never dies. And I actually had a print of it done and put on the wall because I like that, because that's the only thing you can tell them, is that they might have died, but their love didn't. And you got 2 little walking, talking representatives of Ben, right?
So with and truly that year, like, she wanted to understand how the cells of cancer worked, how it changes. Like, we went into some biology things, and
she's going to be a doctor, right?
And I am a therapist also, so I had to like shift and be like, I can't do therapy with my kid, but I also had some of the tools, and so we like created memory boxes and we talked about them all the time. I read every single book you could imagine, not like of myself, but like for explaining how a parent dies. And but now she's in this different stage, and now she's almost 6. And yesterday was Ben's birthday. And I promised Ben, jokingly but serious, that I was going to have wings on his birthday every year for the rest every
food, not the not the feathered kind.
So I've kind of started making it a big deal. I'll like put a post on social media and I tell everybody to like Ben just wanted to indulge in life and live life's happinesses. So like having people, and he loves Star Wars and really nerdy things. And so I've asked people to eat some wings, drink some beers, and dress in dorky things, watch dorky movies, do something. And this year, yesterday, let me back up. I am with somebody else now. So I have a boyfriend. His name is Adam. And um, Adam and Lily decided to throw a surprise party for me for Ben, which
Oh,
I know. Like, are you kidding? How wonderful is she and how wonderful is he? And the night before, I said, "How do you feel about celebrating Daddy's birthday tomorrow?" And she said, "I don't want to do it." And I was like, "Okay, I can understand that." And she said, "It makes me really sad and I don't want to do it." And I said, "You know what? I will never make you do anything you don't want to do. This year, I'm sorry. We are doing something because
it's already
it's
planned.
already happening." But I said, "I'm always going to eat wings on Daddy's birthday because I promised him that. But like, and you can join me or you don't have to. Like, we're in
Giving
this
him a choice.
together and we will figure out along the way how you want to handle this." And I don't know either. So we're just going to have to we're a great team and we've been a great team. And we're going to keep doing this together. So last night we talked about it again and she thanked me. She's like, "Thank you." And she
Sounds amazing.
I know it was really great. But she's like, obviously she sent off at school, they did an art project and it said, "If you were president for a day, what would you do?" And she said, "I would make sure everybody had a parent." And when I tried to talk to her about it, she wouldn't talk to me about it. So she's clearly in like this other stage where uncharted territory.
We get a lot of if they invent a time machine, will I be able to go back and tell Daddy not to go in the water and things like this? And it absolutely breaks my heart. But how wonderful that they're saying these things to us. Because for so many children, it will be bottled up and be going around their little heads with no outlet. And it's even, I mean, my middle son is autistic and he will say things like, he wants to know like if the fish ate his dad, or like really kind of gruesome things.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that there is a point sometimes, and actually the run up to the anniversary of Ben's death, I find very, very tricky. It doesn't get easier that I think because of the fact I walked about all day not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was trying to talk to me, and forgive me, I can't remember the details, but I just said, like, I can't do this today. I'm really sorry. And it was one of the first times I've said that. But I also think that there is an element of having to protect yourself as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to make sure that we're functioning. It's a whole airplane oxygen mask.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with that. I've had to tell that to Lily before. "Lily, I love you. I will always answer your questions and I will answer this tomorrow. But today I'm feeling too sad and I can't."
Yeah.
And she's been really so with that, so Lily, she does still remember Ben to a good degree. It's obvious that she's losing some of those memories and it's causing her some distress. But Nicholas is only 3 weeks old. He has no understanding of anything. And I have Adam, and Adam lives with me, and we've been together for a year and a half now. So yesterday, actually, Nicholas said to Adam, "Adam, you daddy? Who daddy?" Because like I'll show him pictures and but he has this like if we're watching a show, like the prince is daddy or the hero is daddy. He just
funny concept for
can't
him.
comprehend it. And Lily has explained it to him a couple of times because Nicholas loves dinosaurs and she'll say, "Just like dinosaurs died, but we still love dinosaurs. Daddy died and we still love daddy. He's just not here." Dinosaurs are not here.
I want to see a picture of her. You got to send me one after this. But it is, and it's. I find that the kids, they've said to me things like, I can't remember Daddy's voice because Hector's 5. Hector's not 5. He was 5. Sorry, my brain. And he's now 11. And I don't remember much about being 5. Do you? You know?
Nothing.
So of course it's going to fade. And I don't know about you. I've not managed to watch videos of my Ben. Or your Ben might be weird because I just haven't. The thought of seeing him alive, it just feels so cruel. And I did set myself a challenge last year to do it, and I didn't. So, but I'm not beating myself up. The videos are there. My dad is a former journalist, and he has kind of archived all this video for me and the kids. So it's there. It's backed up on like a million different things. So it's there when we're ready. But the responsibility of being the keeper of the memories it is a weight, I feel, that you don't want them to be forgotten. And it's interesting you say about doing a post on his birthday, because I think it might have been last year. I got till I went to bed and I was like, I'm not going to do one this year. Like, he's dead. Why am I wishing happy birthday to him on Facebook? And I thought, actually, no, I am going to, because if it for a minute makes people think about him, just stop and think about the man that he was. And much like your Ben, he was an enormous presence. He was very charismatic. He was, confident, and like one of these guys that you just don't think anything bad will ever happen to, right? And I think it's important. And I feel like I'm going to stop making, for me personally, the 12th of March is always going to be horrific. I know that. But for the kids, I don't know whether I want to maybe do something like you did, just have a not even a party necessarily, but perhaps that's the day we think about him and talk about him, because it's not tarnished with all that pain. But who knows, hey? We just don't, you don't know. And any big anniversary event, and I'm thinking like Nicholas's first birthday, things like that would have been so difficult for you, because I had a party of a tab, so I think I didn't have a particularly big garden, but I had over 100 people there. And I had the cake and the balloons, and me and her had lovely outfits. But I felt like I was in a film, when the world is just going around you and you're just stood there watching it happen, thinking, the fuck is this my life?
Yes, absolutely. I feel that so deeply. I remember the same thing.
Still, right?
I still feel that at times.
Yeah.
It's gotten better, but like still, I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, this is just crazy.
Can I be a little bit of a nosy bugger and just ask you how you and Adam met?
Absolutely. I started dating pretty quickly, I'd say, but it
It's
wasn't
not
really
unusual.
dating. I just needed something that I wasn't taking care of the kids. I wasn't like just helping my daughter through this grieving process, doing therapy. I just was like, okay, I need to do something fun. So I went on some dates, and I didn't mean to take it seriously. And I was not taking it seriously. Just trying to figure out what I wanted again. And
I feel
Adam and
alive.
I started chatting on Bumble. And then quickly, like after quickly we did a FaceTime. We were like, let's meet each other before we
Modern
meet.
dating, eh?
And I was like, this is so fun. Like, I just had such a great, and I just felt so natural and comfortable. So then we went on a date, and I joked with my mom later, and I was like, well, I'm going to fall in love with that guy. That's that. This, because he was like a former bad boy and in the military, and just
Tick, tick,
tick. And really fun and funny and kind. And I was like, that's that for me. And it turned
And
out
here we are.
like within a month and he felt the same way. And we just quickly fell in love with each other. And
And
it just
he's not a
so
widow, is he?
easy and natural.
He's not widowed, I presume.
No, he's not widowed.
No. So that must have been quite something, because and I don't like to use the words take on a widow and two kids, because that implies that we're, a problematic case. But we do come with significant baggage, and I don't mean the kids, I mean our emotional baggage, and kids, right? You can't just drop everything and go footloose, fancy free dating like we did when we met our first husbands. But I do have a kind of like a half-baked theory, and that is that when you lose somebody because they die, rather than because you fall out of love or you divorce or they have an affair, what is left is so much love that has nowhere to go. And you also know what a healthy, good relationship looks like. And like, why shouldn't you have that again? If it crosses your path, you bloody grab it. And I've struggled hugely with what people might think of me, with whether I was disrespecting him, whether the kids would feel literature from when we were kids, like we're meant to wear black and mourn forever. And that's not who I am. I wear a lot of black. That's a fashion choice. But
that's right.
It's just mixed in with my leopard print. But I also, I know what love feels like, and I consider myself fortunate, which always feels a bit peculiar to say, but loads of my friends, right, they're in their 40s, they've not met anybody that makes them feel like Ben did for me. And then to find it again,
I know.
like,
I feel so lucky. And also I joke with Adam, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, well, how amazing are you? This is just incredible. And it just, I feel so lucky.
How do you manage the I struggle with this kind of feeling of doom that something's going to go wrong. And it's definitely more since I was widowed, but I think I've always been a little bit kind of anxious anyway. And I'm just for an example, like the first time my dad drove the boys to a party, a bowling party after Ben had died, and my dad's terrible with his phone. He never answers it. I don't even know why he has one. And obviously he's not answering his phone. And my friend's saying, oh, they're late. Is everything okay? Well, they're dead, aren't they? As far as I'm concerned, they are, there's been no. And I found, and then obviously with John getting so sick and nearly dying, it's like my worst fears came through. And I'm doing a lot of work in therapy, and I'm going to be having another trial of EMDR. Yeah, EMDR, I always get it the wrong way around. But I'm just wondering how that is for you and your relationship. What do you are you able to live your life without this fear of impending doom, or is it kind of there?
Well, like you said, I've always been an anxious person, always. So it's different. I've never, like with Ben, I was so secure in everything that we did. I just knew. I would ask him all the time, "Why do you love me?" I meant it because I just wanted to hear it. I'm a big words of affirmation person, but like I just knew it in my soul that he adored me. And with Adam, I know he does too, but like I
Yeah.
just need more reassurance. Like I feel like I love how you said that about the taking on, because I do feel that. I feel like you are taking on so much. Like, why are you taking on this? But then also, like, how lucky is he? He gets to be with my amazing children,
Yeah.
it
And he's
and we
made that
have so
choice.
much love. And Adam has kids. And he actually just became a grandfather, which is
Oh,
hilarious. He's the same age as me. Like he just had kids a lot earlier. Um, so as Nicholas is 2.5, he also has a brand new grandson. So he's
oh my gosh.
helping to raise Nicholas and um, having a grandchild at the
At least
same
he's
time.
experienced, right?
Exactly. So that's difficult too. Like, and he's an older son and a teenage daughter, and they live in a different state. And then his son he was an 18-year-old son, and he lives with us. And just even navigating that is
Yep.
lovely. It's lovely and it's beautiful to see because like my kids obviously look up to Thomas is his name, and Thomas is so comfortable with the kids, and it's beautiful to watch. But it's also like it's complicated and it's
It is.
confusing. And when Adam's daughter comes, Thomas's sister, like I can imagine for her how difficult that must be to see her dad with these young kids and helping to raise them, and he's not with her, and
Yeah.
watching Thomas have this great relationship, and my heart like hurts for her,
Yeah.
and for Adam too. Like that's just so much for him to carry also, and it's hard and so complicated.
And I think blending families, whatever your circumstances, are challenging. They are, because you've got potentially grieving children. You might, if you've got divorce going on, you might have, conflict going on in the background. And I same as Holly is John's biological daughter, and so she went from being an only child to being one of four. And that's a big jump, right? But she has two brothers and a sister who adore her. And Tabby just, I mean, my God, she would just follow her around like a little sheep if she could. She just adores her. And so, yeah, it takes some jiggling around your parenting styles, and like we're navigating teenage years, like, whoa, right?
Oh my
So,
goodness.
um, so but I think those challenges would have happened anyway, because these kids come with an enormous amount of joy, but like
Mhm.
they will also pull your last nerve. And my mum said to me once, yeah, nobody will ever annoy you as much as your own children. Thanks, mum.
Exactly. And I just feel so grateful for him and for us. Like I'm just and the
Second
whole
chance.
family. Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I mean, who knows? Things might not go the way that I'm hoping them to. Things could not work out.
he might die.
He could die. I could die. Who knows? But I really try hard to be in the present as
Be
much
more
as
Ben. Be more
possible.
Ben. This is it. You like, from everything you've told me about Ben, he sounds like the kind of guy that clearly tried to wring out every last drop of life. So
Mhm.
I'm really happy to hear that you're doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I speak to a lot of grieving parents. I speak to a lot, more women than men actually, but I do speak to a lot of people across the board of grief. And I know that you are a trained therapist, so you do have that armory, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're able to what am I using? What am I trying
To use it for myself or my children? Yes.
Thanks.
Or Adam.
You know what? It's because it's gone over an hour, and once it goes over half an hour, I'm like, come on, brain, come on. Yeah, and I think that I feel like I'm being really gushy, but I think you're amazing. I think that your children have been given a really turbulent start, but also so much love and security, because plenty of children are going through turbulent childhoods, and many don't have this. So what you're giving them is just it's immeasurable. It's wonderful. And I'm just so incredibly sorry that you ended up in this club and that your beautiful Ben had to die too, because we wouldn't have met otherwise. And whilst I'm so grateful to get this opportunity to talk to you, I also wish you weren't in this club. But here we go. Hey, we got this idea of second chances and not kind of wasting it, because if we sit and rock in a corner, which I've been known to do on occasion, this second chance at life is going to pass me by. And it's difficult some days, of course it is, but you get up, you put your big girl pants on, your big pants in my case, and you put your feet on the floor and you keep fucking going. And it's been a real honor to talk to you today. I'm so pleased that you came on, and yeah, thank you. That's a really powerful story, and I'm so looking forward to keeping in touch and seeing what life looks for you as time goes on. I'm building up a list of places I need to go into in America, and I'm just going to do I think I might do a WAF tour. You reckon I can write that off as a business expense? Maybe.
And thank you for everything you're doing. Like, really, and I'm now 3 years out, I think. I can't even remember. But I still listen to people's stories, and it just brings me, I'm like, oh, there's other people going through this, and we'll be okay.
We're going to be all right.
Hopefully we're going to be okay.
And if we're not, we'll deal with it when it comes. And I think that's something that's, if you are anxious by nature, it's that feeling of dread. And I keep saying to myself, if you worry about it, it's not going to stop it happening. I'm going to worry about the wrong thing and something else will happen anyway, right? So you'll deal with it when it comes. And I didn't think of myself as being a strong person. I've always been quite reliant on other people. I've said this before, but on the day Ben died, I was so going, oh, if he died tomorrow, I wouldn't know how to pay my electric bill. And what I have learned is that I am tough, and I'm human, I'm fallible, but I'm also, I'm pretty tough. And I wish that this hadn't been the way I found out, but
absolutely.
Here we go.
And what you're doing is just amazing, and it's helping so many people everywhere. Like,
thank you.
I mean, I'm from Maryland.
I know.
So thank you.
I must have a look at the countries that it's listened to in, because we get some really places that you just would never imagine. And I'm also very grateful to everybody that listens, because otherwise I would be speaking to dead air, and that pun was intended. Thank you so much, Sari. It's been an absolute honor to talk to you. And for anybody that's out there listening and has some questions or comments or anything, you can reach out to me and I can put the questions to Sari if they're relevant, or you can just come direct to me. But don't sit there alone, where we are here, and just take care of yourselves out there, guys. Lots of love. Thank you for listening. If you found this episode helpful, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you think someone else may benefit from this, please do share. We'd also really appreciate a quick review. It helps more people find the show. Thank you again, and see you next time on Widowed AF.